welcome to this week's happy hour. So it's coming up into that kind of festive season here, and I love this time of year. I like a lot of things about it. The chance to have some time off and things just kind of wind down sometimes, not leading into it. I've talked about that last week. The chance to wear, Christmas shirts and earrings, catching up and celebrating the year that's been, and time with my kids, and creating some of those personal family traditions, and all of that, and watching Christmas movies, and the beautiful themes behind them about connection and self-giving without expectation of receiving, and Christmas spirit as such. But there's a lot that I don't like, and a lot of that is around the commercialization of it, and particularly in the era of influencers, this kind of pressure to make Christmas magical. And when we often see that, what magical looks like is expensive and neat and perfect and not messy. And I want to question that. Like, for me, it's sometimes the messy bits are actually the bits that you remember the most or that you enjoy the most. And what we look at when we see these perfect, this feed of just these perfect trees and perfect families dressed up in their perfect outfits is we're just seeing the output of someone who's also selling you something, and they're selling you the idea of this perfect family or this perfect holiday or whatever. And you're not seeing the mess and the nightmare and the crying kids and the fighting and the stress that's come and led into this perfect moment that they've captured and shared on social media. And I think it can make us feel like this pressure to try and have this perfect Christmas. And it just ends up making us feel stressed, pushing things that don't need to be pushed, and taking the joy out of Christmas, which is part of what it's about, is feeling that joy and enjoying that connection and presence with each other when you can. And so I like, as much as possible, to embrace the imperfect around Christmas. And one of my most memorable traditions in our family was, because we grew up on a farm, we would go out and Dad would cut down a actual real Christmas tree, and he would inevitably bring it home. And no matter how many times Mum mentioned to him that the house was a certain height, it would always be too big. And it was hilarious. So we'd have these kind of trees that bent over at the top, or he'd be out trying to saw the bottom off to make it fit. And it's so funny. He still does it to this day. They now have the tree outside when we go there, so they've got more space, but he just gets a bigger tree. And it's a running joke in our family about Dad and his enormous Christmas trees. But it's also one of the most, it's one of my treasured memories about Christmas. And it's not perfect. Nothing about the Christmases growing up was perfect, but it was fun. And the same thing with presents. Like, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get the perfect gift. And, kids have these huge wish lists, and lots of people are getting, amazing amounts of things and very fancy presents. But if you ask, I saw a great video the other day where they were asked sort of teens and preteens to name 3 things that they'd received for Christmas the year before, and most of them couldn't name anything. They couldn't remember because it wasn't important. And I think we can take something from that. I can't remember, what things I've got for Christmas, but I can remember where I was and who I was with, and funny things that happened. And so I think we need to lean into that. So rather than aiming for this stressful, frantic, perfect Christmas energy, can we actually lean into messy, imperfect chaos, but fun and joyful energy? And I think once we take that pressure off ourselves, we might find it a bit easier to get through. So I hope you take something from this and can take some of the pressure off yourself. And I will talk to you next week.